Beirut, Lebanon. Once a point of pride for Lebanon and a floating haven of happiness for Arabic-speaking cruise enthusiasts, this is the Orient Queen today, sinking sadly in the port of Beirut, just next to the iconic silos and rubble from one of the world's most powerful explosions ever. So massive that it was heard in Cyprus and was registered across the world as an earthquake. Like hundreds of Lebanese whose lives were destroyed, and like much of the old city of Beirut, which was ripped to shreds, the ship fell victim to a massive explosion in an adjacent port warehouse, inexplicably stocked full of highly flammable ammonium nitrate. 2 crew members died, and 7 were injured when shockwave from the blast tore through the ship. Our only dream and main goal was to put Lebanon on the world map as a main sailing touristic destination, while other people's goal, those responsible, had only one goal: to make money from corruption and make of Lebanon and the port of Beirut a lawless country and place. And because of that chaos, we lost the boat, we lost 2 young men, and we had many wounded. It was very painful.
Who knew? If we knew what was at the port, not only wouldn't we leave the vessel there, we wouldn't even bring crew on board or passengers, my kids, everyone. It's not just on a personal level, it's just thinking about what has been there and we've been passing by next to it, not knowing what it was. What a responsibility. What if this has happened on a Sunday when we were embarking families on vacation with children, and it's unforgivable.
At that time, I did not believe what had happened. It was so surreal, as if it was a dream or a nightmare we were living. To be honest with you, till now I'm not believing what happened, and I haven't gone back to see the ship. It's very painful for me to see it in a total wreckage. It is the same feeling as seeing your own home totally destroyed. This is where I have the best memories, and I don't think I will be able to go back anytime soon. This is where I met my wife. This is where I got married.
The blast leaves the stricken city stunned and heavily damaged, with over 200 dead and 300,000 homeless. It is a brutal end to a vibrant period of growth and expansion for Beirut, for which MS Orient Queen remains a metaphor. Once the pearl of the Eastern Mediterranean, today she is an unrecognizable wreck that groans through the night, haunting dock workers who pass her rusting iron carcass every day as business slowly returns to the port. It is the 4th of August 2020, a sweltering hot day in Beirut, the capital city of Lebanon, and despite the worst political and economic crisis since the end of the Civil War, a rigid lockdown due to the coronavirus pandemic, and a rapidly collapsing currency, some business is still staying afloat in this progressive pearl of the Mediterranean. Aboumehri Lines was a symbol of the Lebanese entrepreneurial spirit that was thriving in Beirut before the blast. This is the port of Beirut, the gateway to the whole of the Middle East. It was here that the Aboumehri family ran a thriving shipping business with 3 car carriers, as well as a cruise business that had grown since the company bought the Orient Queen passenger liner. We have many ships. We started as a shipping company. In 2005, we started the cruise line, and in 2006, the Lebanese-Israeli war broke out. Back then, we had the first Orient Queen. In 2012, we renewed our activities and bought this one, the new Orient Queen.
The Orient Queen, just a masterpiece for me. In 2003, we as a family that lived abroad for long years and came to Lebanon, and we have history in the sea, we thought, why not have a cruise ship for this market? It's a blue ocean. There's the idea of cruise industry was not so mature in the Arabic market. And we had tried several cruise lines in Europe, and we just fell in love with it. We thought this must happen in Lebanon.
However, there was an unseen menace that only a few key officials knew about, as they had been warned several times. A security guard raised an unheeded alarm months earlier. This is his uncle.
In 2013, the ship called Rosas arrives in Beirut with 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate. In 2014, this is offloaded in Beirut port. At this time, there was no special governmental security force in charge of the port.
The busy port of Beirut is located near the heavily populated city's political and commercial center. A ship is docked alongside. It is the Moldovan-flagged MS Rosos, carrying 2,750 tons of explosives-grade ammonium nitrate that were offloaded a year later, when the ship was arrested and found unseaworthy by the port authorities. The explosives were stocked in Warehouse 12. In these pictures of the Warehouse 12 on the southern dock, we can see the poor state of repair of the building and its location right next to the grain silos. The explosives were left there despite repeated calls to dispose of them. Neither the owners nor the army wanted to touch them, at least not officially. Ironically, the Orient Queen almost always used Pier 5 behind the silos. But port authorities in spring 2020 asked Aboumehri Lines to begin embarking passengers at Pier 11. Dawn breaks over the busy port of Beirut. After a period of closure for the COVID pandemic, the MS Orient Queen cruise ship had just restarted taking passengers from the Arabic-speaking world on cruises through the breathtaking islands and seas of the Eastern Mediterranean, with stops in Turkey, Cyprus, and Greece.
The Orient Queen is also differentiated not only to be the only Arabic cruise line in the region, but also it was giving an added value to the Arabic passengers that it was visiting Greek islands without the Schengen visa. It was just a superstar in the region. Everyone knew the Orient Queen. She was just a queen.
Aboard un'atmosfera totalmente libanese e araba.
Aboard, everything was totally Lebanese and Arabic. From the food to the entertainment, the staff, there was ease of communication. The atmosphere was very, very nice.
Facilità di comunicazione, capito? Quindi, insomma, devo dire che il passeggero libanese è molto understanding.
The Lebanese passenger is very understanding. They don't complain. They're content and feel at home.
È contento, si sente a casa propria.
The 122-meter-long cruise ship had just returned in late June from a 22-day stint in Saudi Arabia as a floating hotel. She was berthed back in Beirut due to COVID. Crew members were taking advantage of the down period to go home to their families and take some time off before the next trip. A skeleton crew of 23 was still on board.
Abbiamo mandato l'equipaggio a casa per prendere fiato un pochettino e poi eventualmente...
We sent the crew home to take a breather to prepare for the next trip, but there was no time to plan it. And now to see it half sunken in their port. And I saw all the videos. Well, it brings a certain amount of emotion.
Io ho visto anche dei filmati, vedevo passavamo con la barca con Hana, vedevo cenni di commozione.
Built in Spain in 1989, the ship had initially operated in the Caribbean and Mediterranean under the name Vista Mar and operated under charter by German-based cruise companies. She had also taken voyages to the Arctic and the Antarctic, to Greenland, and even up the Amazon River. After striking a rock near her home port of Ibiza, she was repaired in dry dock and then kept sailing.
She was idle in Italy when we visited her. We were searching for this size of vessel, and it was just love at first sight. So there was so minor things to be done, actually.
In 2012, she was acquired by the Lebanon-based Aboumehri Group, who remodeled her interior to give it an oriental appeal for wealthy Middle Eastern clients. Hana worked on the ship for years, curating entertainment, food, and guests' comfort before eventually becoming manager. The mother of two speaks lovingly about the vessel, her great passion.
Just when you enter the vessel, at the reception area on deck 5, people would go in and they would just look upwards. It's where the panoramic stairs with the dome on top. And you would find the crew members standing around during embarkation, greeting the people, everyone in front of his own facility, the spa, the casino, the kids club. They were just waiting to greet the people. So this was my favorite part, is when you enter at embarkation. It was every Sunday. You just look up and everyone was just ready for a new adventure. I have pictures of the Orient Queen on my mobile phone. I won't say more, but probably as much as I have of my own 2 kids.
The appetite for cruise options with Muslim sensitivities was growing. And as the only cruise company actively targeting the Arabic source market with trips that didn't require European Schengen visas, business was booming.
Avevamo questo permesso di transitare.
We had the permission to transit in Greek ports without visas. Obviously, we took the whole responsibility on ourselves, and thankfully, touching wood, we never had any big problems. On the other hand, we were also very careful about how clients boarded, how much luggage they had, and the owner himself, when he came out on the cruise, which happened quite often, stood there looking out for anyone suspicious. It was teamwork to watch out for strange people.
Allo scalandro controllava anche lui se c'era qualcuno sospettoso, no? Quindi c'era proprio un gioco di squadra.
It is a 300 passenger ship, so it was ideal for the market size. Even the size of it, it's described as a boutique cruise. It was accessible to Virgin Islands. Also, the passengers, they used to come from different countries in the Arabic region, not just Lebanon. And Arabic passengers by default are sociable people. They like to make some friends and to be around, to socialize. So the size of it was just perfect because everyone was gathered in the same place, dining room, shows, it was together.
I am the assistant officer and ship security officer. I have been working on the Orient Queen for 6 years, from 2013 till the explosion. Orient Queen was my second home, especially with the crew and the captain. We were very well treated and had a nice life on the ship. We were from different nationalities. There were Germans, Filipinos, Ukrainians, Romanians, from different places.
The nice thing about this operation is the loyalty we formed with the crew members. It became a big family because we had around 85% of the crew members returning every season. They would make sure that they are available throughout those months to be back with us. And this created a strong bond. Plus, towards the passengers that were sailing with us on a seasonal basis, and sometimes more than once every season, it was just, there was no ice to break. They used to call each other by name. It was just a very positive, peaceful, happy project.
Sometimes Mr. Aboumehri himself took cruises alongside his loyal customers. Orient Queen, in my opinion, of lots of people who've sailed on it, is a place where you build good memories. I have very good souvenirs. As far as I am concerned, it was more pleasure than business. Seeing people happy made me happy. We were the only one to sail from Beirut port as a cruising destination. As the sun began to set in the late afternoon of August the 4th, 2020, a fire broke out in the port, in Warehouse 12. It was around 5:40 local time. The fire brigade was sent to the scene at 5:54. The crew of the Orient Queen had also noticed the fire and were curious. Mohammed Khalifa and other members of the crew had gone out onto the dockside to check it out and had begun filming with their cell phones.
The sound of the fire started changing suddenly, and I felt something dangerous was about to happen, so I ordered the crew members to stop taking photos and to run towards the boat to hide. While we were running, the explosion happened, and we were blown away at least 5 meters by the strength of the explosion, which provoked massive waves. We could not understand what was going on. It was as if hell had fallen on us.
نحن كنا برا أول شيء كنا جوا بقلب الباخرة فصرنا نسمع زي فرقاع.
On the day of the explosion, we were inside the boat when we started hearing a sound very similar to fireworks, so we decided to go out to watch. Once outside, we heard a loud explosion. My co-worker told me, "Let's go inside and hide." We started running, but did not have time to make it inside the boat when a second huge explosion happened.
فجينا عم نتراكب بدنا نحاول نفوت على الباخرة ما لحقنا نفوت على الباخرة لا حتى طلع الانفجار الكبير. من الكرو يعني كان بقلب الباخرة ومن الكرو كان برات.
Some of the crew members were inside the boat and others were outside. Those outside tried to hide. I tried to hide behind a car when suddenly a huge wave hit us. The wave threw us away and I could no longer find the car I was hiding behind.
حدا ما عادش لقيتها نهائيا.
كان منظر مش طبيعي. هلا انا هذا كله عم فسر لك هذا كله بثواني كان كله بثواني عم يصير معي انا وعم بركض.
The view of the boat and of the sea were abnormal for 30 seconds.
شايف الموج عم يطلع فوق.
At least 12-meter high waves, much higher than the boat itself.
الموج كان كثير عالي فوق ال 10 12.
The strength of the waves carried everything on its way. Containers, cars, stones, fragments, everything was flying and falling on us.
نص دقيقة هيدي نص دقيقة عم يطلع الموج على الرصيف عم يصير فيه مثل يعني صار فيه على الرصيف كأنه مثل بحيرة.
Il mio ufficio guardava dal lato del deposito e sentivo un po' di rumore. Ho visto questi.
My office looked at the side of the warehouse, and I heard these small explosions, but they were not big explosions. But after about 15 minutes of calm, suddenly there was this big explosion, and I was hit by 1,000 things and thrown about 20 meters. I felt the contact of my foot with the floor, and so I threw myself down on the floor. And this saved me because I avoided all the debris that was arriving from outside.
E questo diciamo che mi ha un pochettino salvato perché ho evitato tutti i detriti che arrivavano da fuori.
The explosion produced the equivalent of 1.1 kilotons of TNT, possibly the largest non-nuclear explosion of all time. It was registered as a 4.3 Richter scale earthquake in Jordan and was heard as far away as Cyprus. The energy released swept over western Beirut. The original fire that set off the fireworks was so spectacular as to attract many people to their windows to watch, filming the events as they unfolded. As a result, the explosion was captured on video by dozens of mobile phones, along with panicked reactions as the big blast broke their owners' windows and destroyed their homes while they shot the video. When the explosion happened, the shockwave that arrived just seconds later threw the crew around the ship like rag dolls. Several were thrown into the water.
لما طلع البحر علينا هلا أنا غبت يعني عن الوعي شي ثواني تقريبا إنه خلص المية.
When the sea buried us with its waves, I fainted and could not breathe. It took me a few seconds to regain consciousness. I woke up and looked around me, and it was so dusty and dark that we could not see anything. I started searching for my co-workers. Some were coming out very wounded from the boat.
ما كنتش اسمع شيء يعني كنت اسمع بس صريخ حدا عم بعيط. لما بطل في ضباب هالقوي صرنا نلاقي بعضنا شوي شوي.
23 كنا للأسف خسرنا.
We were 23 on the ship. Unfortunately, we lost 2.
23 هن كان في بيناتهم حوالي.
Among those, 18 approximately were on the sidewalk taking photos,
والبقايا كانوا فوق على الأوبن ديكس وعلى
and the others were inside the boat or on the open deck.
يعني بيجوا داخل الباخرة.
Those who died were on the top open deck, and the second one was on the sidewalk.
والثاني كان على الأوبن ديك على الباخرة.
It took us more than 2 hours to find the guy who was on the sidewalk. We found him 40 meters away from the boat.
ما كنا متخيل نحن إنه يكون فيه بعيد عن الباخرة حوالي 30-40 متر.
4th of August, I was in my hometown. At that time, it is 45 kilometers away from Beirut, Sidon. And I was heading home, and I was at a photographer's shop, picking up photographs of my children. And I remember the whole shop, it shook. The glass, the doors, it was like pressure, and my ears, I felt the pressure. The salesman is quite an elder person. He stood up and he said, "That's an explosion." And then he sat down and continued working as if nothing had happened. I ran home, and then my daughter was standing at the door of the house. She's 10 years. And she screamed, "Mommy, it's an earthquake." I ran into the house. I remember I left my bags on the floor, everything, just to turn on the news. And this is where my husband came. He told me, "Relax," but apparently something at the port happened.
Hana's phone would soon be lighting up with messages from friends and family across Lebanon. She scrolled back through and saw a message from hotel director and veteran crew member Vincenzo Orlandini, sent just 1 minute before the explosion.
I went back in my chats to call Vincenzo Orlandini, who was on board, and we had been talking not a long time ago. And I saw that he had sent me a text message at 6 o'clock and 3 minutes. There is a big fire next to us and it looks dangerous.
She was in a place where reception isn't good, so I left a voice message. And then I called my family here to say that if they heard something, I was okay, I was alive. Then communications ended.
I tried every single number I have of all of them. Muhammad, Mahmoud, Captain Roger, everyone I know at the port. It was impossible. I remember Vincenzo was using his African SIM card. I don't know if there's any relation or not on his WhatsApp, so I called him on WhatsApp on his African number, and he answered. I heard his voice. He didn't take long to pick up, but it was the longest moment of my life, waiting for him to pick up. When he answered, he said, "We're okay, there was a big explosion, many crew are injured," and then I lost connection.
The port was in tatters, with injured dock workers crying for aid from beneath the rubble. In the old city of Beirut, shell-shocked, injured residents were streaming through the broken city, searching for hospitals and help. At Pier 11, the Orient Queen had taken the full brunt of the explosion just 500 meters away, and several of the skeleton crew, just 23 men, were injured or missing.
Uno mi ricordo che l'avevo visto prima con la bicicletta che girava in banchina.
One of the things I'd seen was one of the crew members who was riding around on a bicycle, and the full force of the explosion hit him full on. Another two were wounded, another died in hospital, and all of them were of the technical crew. Most of my hotel staff survived, but the technical crew suffered the most.
After a brief head count, the crew realized 2 of the 23 who had been on board were missing. Mustafa Ayrut of Syria had gone down to have coffee at a kiosk at the port. Haile Mariam Reta, Haile, of Ethiopia, had been on the open deck filming.
بهالحالة هيدي عن جد ما خطر شيء على بالنا انه نحن فكرناه عن جد كأنه حلم أو كابوس.
At that moment, and in such a nightmarish situation, we did not believe what had happened, as if we were waking up from a bad dream. I was in so much fear, I was panicking, I could not think, and I did not know what to do or how to react. All I could remember is that we were 23 on the ship. So we started following the loud screams to find our friends among the debris and chaos.
So I told my father, we have 7 injured crew and they need hospitals. And no number was answering for emergencies. I remember there was a live broadcast on news talking about the explosion, and we happened to know the journalist speaking. So my father called the TV channel. He said, "My name is Hana Aboumehri. I'm the owner of the Orient Queen on Pier 11. We have 7 injured crew and we are desperately in need for ambulances. Please send help." And it was less than 15 minutes where 3 or 4 ambulances were at the port.
No, about me, بالنسبة لي كان كل شيء تمام بس أجري.
My leg was wounded, but I was okay. I was safe. I was protected by the boat. Those who ran to hide towards the boat miraculously survived. Those who stayed where they were more seriously injured.
في من ضلوا محلهم انقذوا أكثر مني. فالحمد لله.
Despite his own injuries, and like other crew members bleeding and battered but still able to walk, Mohammed Khalifa went to rescue others who were worse off, like Michael Villanuovo.
أنا طلعت على سويمينج بول لفوق، لقيت حدا من الكرو من الفلبين يعني اجره مكسورة يعني بشكل.
I went to the swimming pool and found one of the crew members from the Philippines very badly injured, with a broken leg. But I was not able to help him alone. The tables, chairs, and even the walls were on top of him. I called the rest of the co-workers to help me rescue him. Finally, 3 of us were able to carry him to the sidewalk and waited for the Red Cross to come and take him.
When Hana located Villanuovo at the hospital, doctors said they were going to amputate his leg. Hana pleaded with them not to, and instead to try to save the limb.
So he had taken 2 or 3 surgeries in Lebanon, and then Michael requested to go home and continue his treatment there. But he cannot work at all because he can't stand up or move. So we also feel responsible towards Michael as well.
Hana and her family went into emergency overdrive, trying to account for all the crew members who were on board the ship when the explosion happened. The ship would need attention, but the human lives had to come first. So
I was just waiting by my phone because I always give my phone number to the crew members in case anything happens while they come from their home country to Lebanon, at the island, anything. Just, I feel better when I know that they can directly reach me because I'm always reachable. So that night, I received a phone call from a random number, and I answered, and the person didn't say anything. It was a man, he was just crying. It was one of the crew members, but he was out of words, so he just cried. And I asked him, "Are you okay?" He said, "Yes, we're okay."
عندي وقتها انا لما صار الانفجار راح تليفوني ما مع شيء.
When the explosion happened, my phone broke, and after an hour I remembered that I had to call my parents to tell them I was okay, so I used the phone of someone who was there. They were terrified with the thought that I might have had something. I also called my wife. She was crying, and I told her, "Thank God you were not there."
حدا من الكرو قلت لها انه انا بخير، قالت فكرتك انه صار معك شيء، قلت لها الحمد لله انه انت ما كنت بالانفجار.
اكيد لما صار الانفجار.
On the day of the explosion, I lost my phone. It was only 2 hours later that I was able to call my parents to tell them I was fine. They were extremely worried and were so relieved to find out I was still alive.
عايش او مني شيء. فلما دقيت لهم وطمنوا عني ارتاحوا.
The situation of the crew, they were as if they came out of a war because they were barefoot, wet, broken clothes, no personal belongings, and this is how they were taken. And for me, it was, okay, they have to be taken to a secure place, but where were they taken? I had no idea. But they're in good hands.
A number of men needed ambulances and hospital care, but the hospitals themselves were in tatters. These terrifying images recorded by CCTV cameras at the St. George's Hospital that overlooks the port explain the high number of victims. The shockwave smashes the windows and pulls down fixtures to walls and ceilings.
They were taken to a hospital, I don't remember what area, because the hospitals around the port, nothing was remaining. And the load of the emergencies taken to hospitals, so they had to treat them in the parking lots. Yeah, they were all treated in the parking lot because the number of humans everywhere was. So he asked the lady that was donating blood to use her number, her mobile, so he called me. He gave me the hospital name, and I understood that the 7 are together, 6 actually, 6, one was not with them. And then I tried to call taxis to reach to the hospital so they can bring them back to the hotel. And no taxi service was willing to send a taxi before 2 hours. It was a chaos in Beirut, chaos.
بلا رجعنا قعدنا كلنا سوا وصرنا نحكي بالموضوع انه اللي صار.
When we left the port zone, the view was shocking and unrecognizable. It was like a desert with cars upside down and total chaos. Nothing looked the way it was before the blast. I have lived for the past 6 years in the port area, and I know it by memory. But it was a desert and unrecognizable.
وكانت كتير بحالة يعني كتير كل شيء مكسر بقلب الباخرة.
Once the injured had been transported to hospitals and the rest of the crew was safe back at the hotel above Aboumehri offices, finally, it was time to turn the attention to saving the ship, which had been beaten against the pier and then took the full brunt of the shockwave.
كل ما عم بيقرب الوقت كل ما الباخرة عم تميل شوي عم تتعبى مي من جوا شوي بس هي الانفجار كان على 6 هي غرقت الباخرة تقريبا كلها.
With every minute passing by, the ship was leaning more and more and filling with water. The explosion happened at 6 p.m. The boat sank totally at 2 a.m. It took approximately 7 hours. Don't forget that we had approximately 24 ropes attached to the boat that had totally disappeared. As much as we could, I told the crew to go inside the boat and try at least to save their personal things before the boat totally sank. We picked up what we could. As I told you, it was total chaos inside.
مثل ما قلت لك الطوابق كلها ما عم نعرف نحن باي ديك نحن البواب كلها رايحه فت على غرفه الثانيه عندي غرفتين فت على غرفه الثانيه لاجيب اغراضي ما قدرت اجيب شيء كلها على الارض حملت حالي وفليت هذا اللي صار.
L'armatore immediatamente prima ha cercato di contattare subito tutti i mezzi di soccorso.
The owner immediately tried to contact all the emergency vehicles, and unfortunately no one replied. And then he created the logistics side: transport, accommodation in a hotel. They owned a hotel too. So they tried to, where possible, get us in there. So there was frenetic activity both around the ship and in the office. Remember that the owner lives in Saida, which is about 50 kilometers from Beirut. So everyone did what they could to save what could be saved. And I have to say that the primary preoccupation of the owner was the personnel.
Quindi tutti si sono subito attivati per cercare di salvare il salvabile o intervenire, e devo dire che la preoccupazione principale dell'armatore è stata proprio il personale.
We evacuated the crew and we knew that if water flows in, the end is predictable, but we were just praying for time. So the port was closed that night. Everything was closed, nobody was allowed to enter. There was one seaman, or he's probably employed at the port. He used to help us to tie the ropes when we arrive and leave. So he called us that night. He said, I'm next to the vessel and she's leaning more towards the pier. So we asked him to keep us updated. Please keep calling us every now and then just so we know. And by midnight he told us that the peak of it had already touched the pier and she's now leaning. So we prayed that she would remain like this until the morning, and then we probably could find some help from another port just to lift it up.
First, the Aboumehri family tried to make sure the ship lost no oil or fuel. The last thing Beirut needed was a polluted port.
We were concerned about the leakage of the fuel because she was just ready for departure, fueled with everything. So obviously after the explosion there was some leakage, so we had to take action. We didn't want to pollute or cause any more damage. And after a while they had requested that we need to move the vessel because they are need for the pier.
The plan, نحن بعد ما غرقت السفينة قمنا كان فيها زيت ومازوت قمناهم على.
After the explosion, the ship sank. We had all kinds of fuel and oil leakage, which was polluting the sea. So we paid a German company to remove all the polluting elements from the sea.
الفيول والزيوت اللي بقلبها بتشكل خطر على البولوشن على التلوث سلمناهم لشركة ألمانية وقمنا هيدا على نفقتنا مبدئيا.
Frustratingly, months passed without any answers. The Aboumehri family was unable to make an insurance claim until the government declared whether or not the explosion was an accident or intentional. Negotiations with the Ministry of Transport about dismantling the ship stalled. Confusion reigned.
I don't think there's much left to do with it, actually. Nothing is, it's just a damaged pile of metal and wood, half underwater. And the logistics of taking her out of the water is a very complex operation. So there's nothing left actually.
Our goal is to save the ship. Sorry, actually the ship is a total loss. What I meant is our goal is to restart the cruise line, but only if there is a change of the current political leaders and parties. But as long as things remain the same, I will not do any new investment. The Aboumehri family was left in limbo, their ship slowly deteriorating, unable to be salvaged or scrapped. Its only companion, a lone sea turtle, itself missing a fin from the blast. The turtle circles the wreck, day and night. Who is to blame for the 4th of August 2020 explosion in the port of Beirut of a huge ammonium nitrate stock may never come to light. There is proof that between 2014 and 2017, no less than 3 letters were sent to the government by the Customs Directorate warning of the danger. Nothing was done until it was too late. My personal opinion is that there is something very strange and not normal. It is not a coincidence that this merchandise arrived in this ship, which was in a very bad shape and about to sink, then offloaded from the ship and stored in the pier for 7 to 8 years, to end up exploding in this particular time. There is more to it than evading responsibility. They have arrested 32 people. Of course there is some nonchalance. But in my opinion, the explosion is made on purpose. The political situation is very bad. It's an organized crime. There are people who want to see the bankruptcy of this country. And this explosion is part of this crime, to put Lebanon on its knees, whether economically, physically, or morally. For example, my children and I, who lived in Germany in the past, we want to leave the country again and emigrate a second time. The proximity of one of the world's longest-running wars, the presence of Hezbollah in the city, and the arms embargo imposed on the Syrian regime may have tempted friends of Syria to remove some of the powerful explosive for weapons use. But nothing has been proved in court, and every time a magistrate tries to dig deeper, there are attempts to have them removed from the investigation.
فهذا الشيء أنا بعتبره أكثر بكثير من إنه حادث.
I consider that it is much more than a Rosas boat loading merchandise and suddenly exploding. As everyone knows, some of the ammonium nitrate was allowed to leave the port territory without any control of the customs. How did this happen? And only part of it exploded. How is it possible that this explosion did not provoke the remaining of the products to explode? For me, it is a well-studied and prepared crime with a message. Human rights groups, lawyers, and journalists have led the call for an international investigation due to the flawed government inquiry. I am very depressed, and my spirit is at its lowest. My dream was, as I told you, to put Beirut on the world map as a sailing touristic destination, and now everything is gone. Yet somehow, young people in Beirut are hanging on. There is a desire to stay, rebuild, restart.
Deep, deep down, I know that this is not the end of the journey. I had so many dreams of me walking through the vessel and the hallways. It was for a while. And then when I managed to gather myself, and then I thought, no, I won't let this stop. We won't.
I say, let's not waste what we've created. They had become an icon of the market, unique in the cruise market. And in the Arab tourism market, we'd become a point of reference.
Probably, maybe the support of the crew members and the passengers that they called, emailed, letters, saying, we're waiting for you, and we're sure there will be an Orient Queen 3, and count us in. I think this gave me a boost to look forward, but time, I don't, it's just, we have to have stability again. So many factors in Lebanon. It's just pulling us backwards, but I'm pretty sure someday will be the right time. And